The text came in at exactly 1 o'clock in the morning. The screen lit up against the dark of my apartment, its glow casting strange shadows across the ceiling. I blinked into the light, assuming it was a system alert or some midnight spam. But no, it was from my mother. "Sweetheart, we need to talk about Thanksgiving. Sarah has taken the lead on planning this year. She's invited a few of her colleagues, and, well, she feels it's best if you don't come. We hope you understand." I sat up slowly, read it again, then again, waiting for the words to rearrange into something less absurd. Something sane. Another ping. "Sarah thinks your presence might create tension. She wants it to be a sophisticated evening, and she's put a lot of work into this. Please don't take it personally." I stared at the screen until my thumb finally moved. I typed one word, noted, and hit send. That was all I gave them. No questions, no anger, no reminders. Not even a reminder of the $60,000 I had wired to their mortgage company 6 months earlier. Draining the brokerage account I'd built over 15 years, or the rental property I'd sold to make it happen. Not a word about the nights I skipped meals to hit savings goals, the years of secondhand furniture and 80-hour weeks. Not even a whisper about the papers they'd signed so desperate. They hadn't read the fine print. They hadn't just uninvited me from Thanksgiving. They had confirmed what I hadn't wanted to admit when I paid off their debts. That love in our family had a hierarchy, and I was somewhere below optics and convenience. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I placed my phone on the nightstand and turned off the lamp. And in the stillness of that early morning, I realized something else. I wasn't hurt anymore. I was done. I closed my eyes and slept better than I had in weeks. By morning, I had already called my lawyer. It started with student loans and frozen dinners. My first tech job paid just enough to cover rent and ramen, but I kept my head down and worked. While others in the office chased promotions with designer bags and networking brunches, I taught myself back-end frameworks on weekends. I skipped vacations, wore the same 3 thrifted coats every winter. I never complained. By 26, I had my emergency fund. By 30, I'd saved enough to buy a small rental duplex an hour outside Portland. Nothing glamorous, just solid, quiet like me. Meanwhile, Sarah floated from one passion project to the next. She quit law school halfway through, claimed she wanted to start a wellness brand, and racked up tens of thousands on our parents' credit cards for investor meetings in Napa and Miami. When she came home, she brought back nothing but scented candles and vague stories about potential partnerships. Every time. Our parents cleaned up after her. Or rather, they called me. "Can you help cover this month's minimum?" She says she just needs a little more time. Sarah's trying so hard. She just needs support. I sent what I could, sometimes more. I watched their mortgage payments lapse while Sarah leased a new SUV with custom rims. I watched my mother cry about property taxes while Sarah posted poolside brunches on Instagram. Still, I said nothing because I loved them. Because I thought being useful was the same as being valued. I told myself the house would stabilize them, that paying it off would stop the bleeding. I sold the duplex, took the tax hit, and transferred every last dollar. I had $60,000 in total to their lender. They called me a blessing. They promised to pay me back. They said Sarah finally understood the damage she'd caused. I wanted to believe them. I really did. But 6 months later, the only thing I received was a text disinviting me from dinner. And that's when I remembered the one thing they had forgotten. I hadn't just given them money. I had made them sign a contract. I still remember the look on their faces the day I handed them the papers. Mom's eyes were swollen from crying. Dad kept rubbing the back of his neck like it hurt to admit how bad things had gotten. Sarah wasn't there. She was in Tulum, supposedly networking. They hadn't even told her how close the house was to foreclosure. Or maybe they had. Maybe she just didn't care. They had called me their last hope. I told them I would help, but not without conditions. For once, I wasn't going to throw a financial lifeline with no boundaries attached. My lawyer, Karen, had drawn up a clean binding agreement. They would have 6 months to either repay the loan in full or begin monthly rent at market rate. If neither happened, the house would be formally transferred to me and I could do what I wanted with it. They signed without reading past the first page. "You've always been the reliable one," Mom said, clutching my hand like I was a miracle. "I don't know what we'd do without you." They didn't know that this time I wasn't doing it for them. Not really. I was doing it to survive being part of this family without losing myself in the wreckage. Now, sitting at my kitchen table in the morning light, I opened my laptop and clicked into the folder labeled Harper Legal. Inside was everything signed PDFs, payment confirmations, notarized forms, copies of the wire transfer, a paper trail for every promise, every cent. It wasn't spite. It was structure. My version of protection. And they had forgotten all of it. They'd been so used to my silence that they mistook it for surrender. But I hadn't forgotten. And the contract had a date on it. That date was tomorrow. I didn't want to make a scene. That was never the point. The moment I confirmed the contract date, everything fell into place. There was no speech to prepare, no confrontation to script, just a series of quiet, deliberate actions, each one an undoing of the version of me they thought I'd always be. I opened a new tab, typed in my airline rewards login, and booked a one-way first-class ticket to the Bahamas window seat departure Thanksgiving morning. Then I texted Karen. "Go ahead, serve the notice during dinner. They'll be home." She didn't ask why. She'd seen the files, heard the tone in my voice when I first came to her 6 months ago. I didn't want their house. I didn't want payback. What I wanted, what I'd always wanted, was a family that didn't make me earn my place at the table by bleeding for it. They hadn't left me out of Thanksgiving. They had freed me from one more year of pretending to belong. I closed my laptop and walked to the bedroom. In the closet, my suitcase still had the tag from my last work trip. I packed it slowly. Swimsuits, linen dresses, 2 books I'd been meaning to read, and the folded copy of the contract. Not to wave around, but to remind myself I didn't imagine this. I didn't overreact. I gave them the chance to do right by me, and they chose not to. I wasn't going on vacation. I was choosing not to carry what wasn't mine anymore. As I zipped the bag, I heard a ding. Another message from Mom. "We hope you're not too upset. Sweetheart Sarah's just under pressure, and this dinner means a lot. We'll celebrate with you another time." I didn't reply. By the time they'd be passing appetizers, the notice would be in their hands. Thanksgiving arrived with the precision of a well-rehearsed performance. Sarah had hired a caterer. There were crystal wine glasses on rented tables. She'd posted a boomerang on her story that morning, candied pecans tumbling into a bowl captioned "Elevated Holiday Energy." What she didn't post was the moment a courier arrived at the door with a flat manila envelope bearing our family's last name. I didn't see it in person, of course. I was at Portland International Airport sipping an oat milk latte in the first-class lounge watching rain trace soft lines across the windows. The first message came from Dad. "What does this legal notice call us immediately?" Then Mom Amelia, "You can't do this. This is our home." And Sarah, predictably last, "You're insane. You're ruining everything." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The contract was clear 6 months from the date of transfer. They would either repay the full amount or begin paying rent. If not, the property would revert to me and legal proceedings would begin. The papers they just received were the first step in that process, a formal reminder of the terms they'd signed with the eviction clause highlighted in bold. From what Margaret told me later, Sarah's boss and his wife were already seated at the table when the envelope was opened. He saw the panic, the shouting Mom crying in the kitchen, Dad making threats about lawyers he couldn't afford. Sarah trying and failing to explain why the house might not be theirs for much longer. I imagined her face, the scramble behind the smile, the illusion cracking in real time. I looked down at my boarding pass gate, C7 Bahamas via Miami, as the attendant called first-class boarding. I drained the last of my drink, slipped on my coat, and walked toward something quiet. Not revenge, just relief. The call came 2 days into my trip, just as the sun began to slip behind the turquoise edge of the horizon. I answered without checking the screen. Sweetheart Grandma Margaret said, her voice warm and just a little amused. "You should see what you've done." I leaned back into the cushions of the villa's patio and closed my eyes. It's a mess, I assume. Oh, it's magnificent. She chuckled. Sarah's perfect dinner collapsed in under 20 minutes. Your father shouted himself hoarse. Your mother was sobbing into a dish towel. The boss's wife asked if this was a bad time and excused herself halfway through dessert. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. She lost the promotion, Grandma continued. Apparently, her boss doesn't appreciate being lied to or hosting dinner in a house that doesn't legally belong to her family. I didn't feel joy. Not exactly. Just a clean, sharp sense of correction of truth finally being louder than the performance. And your father? She added, voice softening. He found the statements the ones showing Sarah's been taking out cash advances in their names for months. He's furious. First time I've ever seen him like this. That landed harder than anything else. Dad had always been silent when it came to Sarah. Disappointed maybe, but never truly angry. Never willing to look her choices in the face until now. They want to talk, Margaret said. All of them. Even Sarah. I think they're ready to listen. I let the silence settle between us for a beat, the waves lapping softly nearby. I'll come home, I said. Tell them to meet me at my place the day after I land. Grandma hummed in approval. I've waited 15 years for someone to stand up to Hurricane Sarah. Thank you for being the one. I smiled as the line went quiet. This time, I wouldn't be returning as their backup plan. I arrived in Portland just after dawn. The city, still quiet streets slick with rain. By the time I reached my apartment, they were already waiting. My mother stood when I opened the door, eyes, tired hands clenched in front of her like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to reach for me. Dad looked older, smaller, and Sarah bare-faced hair pulled back. Not a designer label in sight sat on the edge of the couch like someone bracing for impact. I didn't offer hugs. I didn't offer tea. I sat across from them, opened my laptop, and clicked into the presentation I'd prepared on the plane. I'm not here to argue, I said. I'm here to offer a path forward. 3 slides, 3 options. Option 1, sell the house. Liquidate non-essential assets. Sarah's car, the Aspen timeshare designer items, and use the proceeds for a down payment on a modest home. Option 2, Dad launches the accounting firm he's always talked about. I fund it as a documented loan with structured repayments and quarterly reviews. Option 3, Sarah checks into a financial therapy program. No phones, no spending, no external funding for 1 month. I moved through each option slowly, clearly. No guilt, no apology. This isn't punishment, I said. This is structure a future with accountability. No one spoke right away. Mom's eyes brimmed. Dad stared at the floor. Sarah didn't move. Then she finally asked, "Why are you doing this?" After everything I've done, I looked at her. Not the polished version. Not the storm she threw at everyone else, but the girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. Because you're my sister, I said. And because I believe the part of you that wants to change is still in there. She nodded once barely, and for the first time, no one interrupted me when I clicked to the next slide. Sarah broke first, not with shouting or blame, but with something quieter. Her voice cracked as she said, "I don't want to be this person anymore." Her eyes stayed fixed on the rug, shoulders hunched like she was trying to disappear into the floor. I waited. Mom turned to me next. "We didn't know what to do," she said. We were scared. Every time we tried to talk to her, she'd explode and we let it go on because we were afraid of losing her. Dad cleared his throat. We thought we were protecting the family by keeping the peace, but we weren't. We were enabling her and failing you. I didn't respond right away. There were 100 things I could have said, a decade's worth of silence I could have broken wide open, but instead I opened the folder on the table, the original contract. "I'm not rescinding this," I said. "You signed it because you needed help, and I honored that. What you do next is your choice, but this time I won't be cleaning up without boundaries." Dad nodded slowly. "We understand." Mom reached out, fingers trembling as they touched the edge of the paper. "Can we still fix this?" "You can start," I said. "Fixing is your job now, not mine." Sarah lifted her eyes. "I'll do the treatment," she whispered. "If you'll help me get in, I'll go." "I will," I said, "but not because I owe it to you. Because I want the version of you who meant it when she said she wanted to change to have a chance." She blinked, a tear slipping down her cheek. "It didn't fix anything, but it cracked something open." Dad nodded. "We'll follow the terms." It was the first time they'd said that without flinching, and I believed them just enough to let the moment be real. We met again the following week, this time at a notary's office downtown. No kitchen table, no trembling hands, no vague promises, just documents, dates, and signatures. I'd rewritten the terms with Karen's help. Clear expectations, timelines, consequences, not out of spite, but out of necessity. Trust, after all, had a cost. And this time it came with paperwork. Sarah signed first. Her hand shook slightly, but she didn't hesitate. She was checked into the financial therapy center by that evening. No phone, no credit cards, no curated reality, just truth. Budgets, group sessions, and the mirror she'd avoided for years. Dad signed next in exchange for my startup loan. He'd mapped out a plan to finally open the accounting firm he'd always talked about, but never dared begin. He already had a small client list, thanks to a few people I'd referred from my own circles. He looked both terrified and alive. Mom didn't speak much, but she showed me a list of designer pieces she'd already sold, antiques she'd agreed to part with. A full spreadsheet categorized by value and buyer. It wasn't just money. It was her saying, "I'm in this too." Grandma Margaret stood beside me through it all. When it was time for a witness signature, she stepped forward without being asked. About time someone ran this family like a business. She muttered, pen pressed to paper. There were no hugs afterward, no dramatic apologies or swelling music, but no one walked out. No one tore up the paper, and no one asked for anything different. As we left the office, I carried the signed copies in my bag, not like a weapon, but like armor I should have had years ago. For the first time, everything that mattered between us wasn't buried under guilt or obligation. It was spelled out clearly, and they chose it anyway. The snow started just after sunset, not heavy, just enough to coat the rooftops and blur the edges of the streetlights outside my window. I stood there for a long time, watching it gather in soft layers across the city. Everything felt quieter in the snow, even memory. My phone buzzed behind me on the kitchen counter. I didn't rush to check it. I didn't flinch. It was Margaret. "You didn't destroy anything. You reset the story." I read the message twice, then once more, just to feel it settle. For so long, I thought my only options were silence or explosion, that I had to either swallow the dysfunction or burn everything down to prove I mattered. But I hadn't chosen either. I'd written terms, held a line, walked away without slamming the door, and somehow they'd walked toward me. I turned back to the window. A faint outline of my reflection stared back, older than before, a little sharper around the eyes, but steady present. Sarah had been at the treatment center for 10 days. She'd sent me a letter, handwritten shaky in places, honest in a way I hadn't expected. She hadn't asked for forgiveness. She'd asked for space to keep trying. It was the most adult thing she'd ever written. Dad emailed me a rough draft of his business website that morning. No flash, just basic services, contact form, pricing. He'd even asked for feedback. And Mom, she'd forwarded me a receipt from Goodwill, 8 bags of clothes, 4 pieces of furniture, 1 designer handbag she said she didn't even remember buying. They were trying. And for the first time, I wasn't bleeding to make it happen. I closed the curtains. The snow kept falling. In my living room, a single folder sat on the shelf next to my record player. Inside it, the original contract, the new agreement, and a copy of Sarah's intake form from the clinic. Not to hold over them, just to remind myself what I'd done, what I'd claimed this time. The piece was mine because I hadn't broken to get it. I'd built it brick by brick, line by line, boundary by boundary. Emilia learns that love and loyalty in her family come with a cost, one she no longer needs to pay without boundaries. By enforcing a contract and holding her family accountable, she realizes her worth isn't tied to her sacrifices. She discovers that setting firm boundaries rather than silently enabling dysfunction can reset relationships on her terms. Choosing structure over chaos, she finds peace not in revenge, but in reclaiming her agency. Amelia's journey teaches her that true belonging doesn't require bleeding for others. It's built through clear expectations and the courage to walk away when necessary.
The call came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was reviewing quarterly reports in my downtown office. I should have expected it, really. My sister Victoria had always been the golden child, the one who married well, lived in the right neighborhood and kept the family name polished. I was the black sheep who disappeared for 5 years and came back driving a 15-year-old Honda. Hi, this is Jennifer Morrison from Elite Event Planning. The voice was crisp, professional and dripping with barely concealed disdain. I'm calling about Victoria Henderson's wedding on Saturday. Yes. I settled back in my leather chair, already sensing where this was going. Well, there's been a situation. The bride's family has reviewed the guest list and frankly, they feel that certain attendees might not fit the aesthetic they're going for. Her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. This is a $300,000 wedding at the Grandview Manor. The guest list includes judges, CEOs, politicians. They need everyone to look appropriate. I could hear voices in the background and then Victoria's laugh, that high-pitched giggle she'd perfected in high school. Tell her we don't need poor relatives making us look bad, Victoria called out, clearly intending for me to hear. Jennifer cleared her throat. So we're going to have to uninvite you. I'm sure you understand. This isn't personal, it's just business. Image matters in these circles. I understand completely, I said quietly, my voice steady. Thank you for calling. Oh good, I was worried you'd make a scene. Have a nice day. The line went dead. I sat there for a moment staring at my phone. Through my office windows I could see the city sprawling below me. A city where I own more real estate than most people could imagine. The irony wasn't lost on me. 5 years ago, I'd left town with nothing but a computer science degree and a burning desire to prove myself. My family had written me off completely when I refused to work for Dad's insurance company. You'll be back, he'd said. The real world will eat you alive. Instead, I'd built something extraordinary. Cloud Vault Technologies had started in my studio apartment, but now it was valued at $2.8 billion. We revolutionized data storage for major corporations, and somehow I'd done it all while my family thought I was struggling to make rent. But that wasn't even the best part. 3 years ago when I started making serious money, I'd begun acquiring properties. Not flashy purchases. I worked through shell companies and holding firms. I wanted to build something solid, something that couldn't be taken away. Real estate was permanent. Real estate was power. The Grandview Manor had been my first major acquisition. Then the Riverside Country Club. The Crystal Palace Ballroom. One by one, I'd purchased every premium venue in the city through my company, Pinnacle Hospitality Group. 47 properties in total, from intimate garden settings to grand ballrooms that hosted governors and celebrities. The beautiful irony? Victoria was getting married at a venue I owned. I picked up my phone and called Marcus, my property manager. Hey, it's Alex. I need you to do something for me. Sure, boss. What's up? The Henderson wedding this Saturday at Grandview Manor. I want you to review the contract carefully. Find any violation, any reason to terminate. Is there a problem? Let's just say the client isn't meeting our standards for respectful treatment of all guests. Marcus chuckled. I'll find something. These society weddings always have contract violations. Want me to handle it quietly? No, I said, an idea forming. I want to handle this one personally. The next few days passed quickly. I learned from my sources, and yes, when you own half the upscale venues in the city, you have sources everywhere. That Victoria's wedding was going to be the social event of the season. 300 guests, a 12-piece orchestra, flowers flown in from Ecuador, and a champagne tower that cost more than most people's cars. She'd invited everyone who mattered in the city's social circles. Politicians, judges, CEOs, the old money families that ran everything behind the scenes. She was marrying Harrison Phillips III, whose father owned the largest law firm in the state. This wedding was her coronation, her final step into the aristocracy she'd always craved. And she'd uninvited me because I didn't fit the aesthetic. On Friday evening I put on my best casual clothes, jeans and a polo shirt, and drove my old Honda to Grandview Manor. I wanted to see the setup to remind myself exactly what was at stake. The place was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers hung from hand-painted ceilings, marble floors gleamed under soft lighting, and the gardens were perfectly manicured. Staff bustled around setting up for tomorrow's event. My staff, though none of them knew I was the real owner. "Excuse me," I called to Jennifer Morrison, who was directing the flower arrangements. "Could I speak with you for a moment?" She turned, her expression immediately souring when she recognized me. "What are you doing here? You're not invited." "I know. I wanted to talk to you about that." "There's nothing to discuss. You don't belong here. This is a sophisticated event for sophisticated people." She looked me up and down with obvious disgust. "You'd stick out like a sore thumb." "I see. And whose decision was that?" "The family's, obviously. Your sister was very clear about the guest list requirements." Just then Victoria appeared in the main hallway, dressed in designer clothes and barking orders at the catering staff. When she saw me, her face twisted with annoyance. "Alex, what are you doing here?" "Jennifer, I thought you handled this." "I did," Jennifer said quickly. "She just showed up." Victoria walked over, her heels clicking on the marble floor. "Look, I know this is hard to understand, but this wedding is important. Harrison's family will be here along with everyone who matters in this city. I can't have you there in your thrift store clothes, driving up in that piece of junk car." "I understand your concerns," I said quietly. "Do you? Because this isn't just about tomorrow. This is about my future, my children's future. The connections I make at this wedding will define the rest of my life." She softened slightly as if she was doing me a favor. "Maybe we can do lunch next week? Just the two of us." "That's very kind of you." "Good. I'm glad you're being reasonable about this." She turned back to Jennifer. "Make sure security knows she's not on the list." I watched them walk away, planning their perfect evening, their perfect future. Victoria had always been beautiful, always been charming, always been everything our parents wanted in a daughter. I'd been the weird one, the one who preferred computers to people, the one who asked too many questions. But tomorrow they were going to learn something about the family black sheep. Saturday morning arrived with perfect weather. I spent the early hours in my home office, a sprawling space in my penthouse that overlooked the river. From here I could actually see Grandview Manor in the distance, its gardens already busy with wedding preparations. 10 a.m. I made the call. "Marcus, it's time." "Contract termination?" "Full termination. Effective immediately." "On what grounds?" "Discriminatory guest policies. Our contract clearly states that venues cannot exclude guests based on socioeconomic status or appearance. It's a liability issue." "Understood. I'll handle the paperwork and notify the client." "No," I said. "I'll handle the notification personally." The wedding was scheduled to begin at 6 p.m. At precisely 4 p.m., as the guests began arriving and the final preparations were being made, I drove to Grandview Manor. This time I wasn't in my Honda. I was in my Bentley, wearing a custom Italian suit that cost more than most people's monthly salary. The parking lot was full of luxury cars. Mercedes, BMWs, Porsches, and more than a few Ferraris. The city's elite had indeed come out for Victoria's big day. I parked near the entrance and walked through the main doors like I owned the place. Which of course I did. Jennifer Morrison was in the main ballroom, making last-minute adjustments to the centerpieces. When she saw me, her face went pale. What are you doing here? And how did you?" She stared at my suit, my car keys, clearly trying to process what she was seeing. "I'm here to discuss the wedding," I said calmly. "You can't be here." "Security," she called out. "That won't be necessary," I said, pulling out my phone. "I have something to show you first." Victoria appeared from the bridal suite, still in her preparation robe but with her hair and makeup done. "Alex, what the hell are you doing here?" "Jennifer, call security now." "Actually," I said, holding up my hand, "before you do that, I think you should see this." I opened my phone and showed them the screen. It displayed the Pinnacle Hospitality Group website, with my photo prominently featured as CEO and founder. Jennifer squinted at the screen. "I don't understand. What does this have to do with anything?" "Pinnacle Hospitality Group owns this venue," I said quietly. "I own this venue." The color drained from Victoria's face. That's impossible. You drive a Honda. You live in that tiny apartment." "I drive a Honda because I like it. I live simply because I choose to. But I own 47 premium venues in this city, including this one." Jennifer was frantically scrolling through her own phone. This can't be right. Our contract is with, oh my God, Pinnacle Hospitality Group. I'm the owner, yes. And as of 1 hour ago, your contract has been terminated. Victoria's voice rose to a shriek. What do you mean terminated? Your wedding planner violated our anti-discrimination policy. We don't allow clients to exclude guests based on their perceived social status or economic circumstances. You can't do this. Victoria screamed. My wedding is in 2 hours. Everyone is already here. I can and I have. You have 30 minutes to vacate the premises. Jennifer was now frantically calling someone on her phone. Sir, we have an emergency situation. The venue just... What do you mean there's nothing you can do? Check the contract. There has to be something. She hung up and turned to me with desperation in her eyes. Please be reasonable. This wedding cost $300,000. The deposits alone. There are 300 guests arriving. We have judges, senators, the mayor. Then you should have thought about that before you decided I wasn't good enough for your event. Victoria was now crying, her perfect makeup running down her cheeks. Alex, please. I'm your sister. I made a mistake, okay? I was wrong. But you can't destroy my wedding over this. I'm not destroying anything, I said calmly. I'm simply exercising my rights as a property owner. You made it very clear that certain people don't belong at sophisticated events. I agree. People who discriminate against family don't belong at my venues. Harrison Phillips III appeared looking panicked. What's going on? Victoria, why are you crying? The venue is kicking us out, Victoria sobbed. My brother owns it and he's canceling our wedding. Harrison looked at me with confusion. You're Alex? But Victoria said you were. She said you were having financial difficulties. Victoria says a lot of things, I replied. Most of them aren't true. By now a crowd was gathering. Other vendors, early guests, family members who'd arrived to help with final preparations. I could see my parents near the entrance, dressed in their finest clothes, looking bewildered by the commotion. Ladies and gentlemen, I called out, my voice carrying across the ballroom. I'm Alexander Morrison, owner of Grandview Manor and Pinnacle Hospitality Group. Due to contractual violations, this event has been cancelled. You have 30 minutes to gather your belongings and vacate the premises. The crowd erupted in shocked murmurs. My father pushed through the crowd, his face red with anger. Alex, what the hell do you think you're doing? This is your sister's wedding. The sister who uninvited me because I wasn't good enough for her guest list? Mom appeared next to Dad, looking between Victoria and me with growing understanding. Uninvited you? Victoria, what is he talking about? It wasn't personal, Victoria said weakly. The wedding planner said. The wedding planner said exactly what you told her to say, I interrupted. That poor relatives would make you look bad. The crowd was now listening to every word. I could see judges, politicians, and society leaders all watching this family drama unfold. Victoria's humiliation was complete and public. But Alex, Mom said, looking at my suit, my confident demeanor, we thought you were struggling. You never said. I never said anything because you never asked. You assumed I was failing because I didn't follow Dad's plan for my life. Dad was staring at me like he was seeing me for the first time. You own this place? How is that possible? I built a technology company. We revolutionized data storage for Fortune 500 companies. The company is now worth $2.8 billion. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Harrison's father, a distinguished man in his 60s, stepped forward. Alexander Morrison? Of Cloud Vault Technologies? You're the Alexander Morrison? Yes, sir. My firm handles some of your corporate contracts. I had no idea you were. This is Victoria's brother. The irony was perfect. The very people Victoria was trying to impress already knew who I was. In the business world, I was somebody. In my family's eyes, I'd been nobody. Victoria was now sitting on a chair, her wedding dress spread around her like a deflated balloon. Alex, please. I'll do anything. I'll apologize publicly. I'll uninvite people instead. Just please don't cancel my wedding. The decision has been made, I said firmly. However, I do have a proposal. The crowd quieted, waiting. I own 47 venues in this city. You can have your pick of any of them free of charge for next Saturday. Same time, same vendors, same everything. but with one condition. Victoria looked up with desperate hope. Anything. Everyone gets invited. No exceptions. No guest list discrimination. No judgments based on cars or clothes or bank accounts. Yes, she said quickly. Yes, absolutely. And one more thing. You'll publicly apologize for your discrimination, and you'll make a donation to the city community center, a place that serves the people you thought weren't good enough for your wedding. Victoria nodded frantically. How much? The full cost of today's wedding. $300,000. Harrison's family exchanged glances. His father stepped forward again. Alexander, that's very generous of you. More generous than they deserve. Family is complicated, I said. But it's still family. As the crowd began to disperse and vendors started packing up, my parents approached me cautiously. Alex, Dad said quietly, I owe you an apology. We all do. I had no idea. You had no idea because you never asked what I was actually doing with my life. You just assumed I was failing because I wasn't doing what you wanted me to do. Mom was crying now. We're so proud of you. And so ashamed of ourselves. The question is, I said, what happens now? Do we keep pretending that success only looks one way? Or do we actually become a family that supports each other? Victoria finally stood up, her wedding dress rustling. She walked over to me with tears in her eyes. Alex, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was so worried about what everyone would think that I forgot what actually matters. What matters? That you're my brother. And that you've always been there for our family, even when we didn't deserve it. He was right about that. 3 years ago, when Dad's insurance company was struggling, a mysterious investor had bought out their debt and restructured their loans at favorable terms. That investor had been one of my shell companies. 2 years ago, when Mom needed expensive medical treatment, an anonymous benefactor had covered the costs. That had been me too. Last year, when Victoria's first engagement fell through and she was devastated, someone had anonymously sent her on a luxury vacation to Europe to recover. Also me. I'd been taking care of my family all along, just like I'd been successful all along. They just hadn't bothered to notice. Here's what's going to happen, I said, addressing all of them. Next Saturday, Victoria will have her wedding at the Crystal Palace Ballroom. It's actually nicer than this place with better acoustics for the orchestra. All the same vendors, all the same arrangements. And the conditions? Victoria asked. You'll invite everyone who was originally invited, plus everyone you uninvited or excluded. The community center donation will happen before the wedding. And going forward, this family stops judging people by their cars, their clothes, or their bank accounts. Deal, Victoria said immediately. One more thing, I added. I'm bringing a guest to the wedding. Of course. Who? I smiled. Jennifer Morrison, your former wedding planner. I'm offering her a job with my hospitality company. Seems like she needs to learn something about treating all people with respect. Jennifer, who had been standing nearby looking mortified, nearly fainted. You're offering me a job? After what I said. Everyone deserves a second chance to do better. But you'll start in customer service, learning to treat every client with dignity, regardless of their background. As I walked toward the exit, my family trailing behind me, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Like I actually belonged with them. Not because I'd proven my worth through money, but because I'd finally shown them that worth wasn't measured by appearances. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Boss, the Crystal Palace is ready for next Saturday. Staff briefed on the inclusion requirements. Also, the community center called. They're overjoyed about the donation. I smiled and typed back, perfect. And Marcus? Make sure there's no VIP parking at the wedding. Everyone parks in the same lot. Even you, boss? Especially me. I'll be driving the Honda. Because some things were worth more than appearances. Some things like family who actually saw you for who you were worth everything. The wedding the following Saturday was beautiful. Victoria looked radiant, Harrison was beaming, and the guest list included everyone from senators to community center volunteers. I danced with my mother, talked business with my father, and even shared a laugh with Jennifer Morrison, who was already proving to be an excellent addition to my team. And yes, I drove the Honda. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is just be yourself, regardless of what anyone expects. As Victoria and Harrison drove away in their honeymoon car, she rolled down the window and called out to me, Thank you for teaching me what really matters. I waved back, then got in my 15-year-old Honda and drove home to my penthouse, where I had a company to run and a city full of venues to manage. But for the first time in years, I also had a family who actually knew who I was. And that, I realized, was worth more than all 47 venues combined. The text came through while I was in a board meeting discussing our company's upcoming IPO. I glanced at my phone and saw Sarah's message, followed by a string of others from various cousins, all saying essentially the same thing. I wasn't welcome at Grandpa's 90th birthday celebration because I couldn't afford to participate in their lavish lifestyle. I turned my phone face down and continued listening to our CFO explain how our pre-IPO valuation had reached $4.7 billion. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I'd learned long ago that family dynamics had nothing to do with actual wealth. My cousins had always seen me as the poor relation. When we were kids, they lived in mansions while I lived in a modest apartment with my single mom. They went to private schools while I attended public school. They took European vacations while I worked summer jobs. What they didn't know was that those summer jobs had taught me more about business than their trust funds ever could. Jordan. Our CEO Michael Chen was looking at me expectantly. What do you think about the timing? Sorry, could you repeat the question? The Forbes announcement. They're releasing the annual list of youngest billionaires tomorrow. Marketing wants to coordinate our IPO announcement with that publicity. I smiled. Let's keep them separate. The Forbes list should speak for itself. After the meeting, I walked back to my corner office on the 47th floor of our downtown headquarters. Quantum Dynamics had grown from a startup in my garage 6 years ago to one of the most valuable AI companies in the world. We specialized in predictive analytics and machine learning solutions that had revolutionized everything from healthcare to logistics. But to my family, I was still just Jordan, the kid who couldn't afford the right clothes for family gatherings. I picked up my phone and scrolled through the messages. Sarah. The party is at the Ritz-Carlton. Dinner alone is $300 per person. Plus we're all chipping in $2,000 each for Grandpa's gift. My cousin Marcus. Maybe you can take Grandpa out for coffee another time. Something more your speed. Cousin Emily, we don't want this to be awkward for you. You know how these things go. Cousin David, it's probably better this way. You'd feel out of place anyway. The final message was from Sarah again. We all agreed. This party is for people who can actually contribute to making it special. Don't take it personally. I typed back a simple response. I understand. Have a wonderful celebration. What I didn't tell them was that I'd already planned to surprise Grandpa for his birthday. I'd arranged for the entire family to receive an all-expenses-paid trip to his hometown in Ireland, complete with a week-long celebration in the castle where his grandfather had worked as a groundskeeper. The trip was scheduled for next month and was costing me roughly $800,000. But apparently, I wasn't even welcome at the local celebration. My assistant knocked on my door. Jordan, your grandfather is on line 1. I picked up immediately. Hi, Grandpa. Jordan. His voice was warm and excited. I just got off the phone with that reporter from Forbes magazine. They wanted to confirm some details about you for tomorrow's article. My stomach dropped. What article? The one about you being the youngest billionaire. Why didn't you tell me? I had to hear about it from a stranger. I closed my eyes. The Forbes list wasn't supposed to be released until tomorrow morning, but apparently someone had leaked it to Grandpa. I wanted it to be a surprise, I said weakly. A surprise? Jordan, they said you're worth over $4 billion. How is that even possible? It's complicated, Grandpa. The reporter explained about your company, this quantum something. Said you invented some kind of computer brain that helps companies predict the future. That's a simplified version, yes. And you never said anything. All these years you let us think. Let you think what? That you were struggling. That you needed help. Jordan, I've been sending you birthday checks for $50 thinking you could use the money. Despite everything, I smiled. Grandpa's birthday checks had been one of the few bright spots in my relationship with the family. He'd never missed one even when his own finances were tight. I treasured those checks, Grandpa. Every single one. But why didn't you tell us? Why keep it secret? I thought about how to explain it. Remember when I was 12 and I won the state science fair? Of course. You built that robot that could sort recycling. Do you remember what happened at the family dinner afterward? Grandpa was quiet for a moment. Sarah said you were showing off. And Marcus said smart kids always turn out weird. And Emily said I should focus on making friends instead of building machines. Jordan. And when I got into MIT on a full scholarship, David said it was because they needed to fill diversity quotas. Sarah said real success meant making money, not just being smart. I remember. So when I started making money, I didn't tell them. I was tired of having everything I accomplished diminished or explained away. But Jordan, for $1 billion. That's extraordinary. It's also exactly what they said could never happen. Smart kids don't make money, remember? We just turn out weird. Grandpa sighed. They were wrong. We were all wrong. Not all of you. You always believed in me. Then why didn't you trust me with this? Because I knew you'd want to share it with the family and I wasn't ready for that conversation. Are you ready now? I looked out my office window at the city below. Somewhere out there, my cousins were planning a birthday party they'd decided I was too poor to attend. I don't know, I said honestly. Well, ready or not, the whole world is going to know tomorrow. That evening, I sat in my penthouse apartment reading the advance copy of the Forbes article. The headline read, "The Quiet Billionaire: How Jordan Walsh Built an AI Empire While the World Wasn't Watching." The article detailed my journey from a kid tinkering with computers in his bedroom to the founder of one of the most valuable AI companies in history. It mentioned my age, 28, my net worth, $4.3 billion, and my reputation for avoiding publicity. It also mentioned that I'd never married, had no children, and kept my personal life extremely private. What it didn't mention was that I'd spent most of my adult life feeling like I didn't fit anywhere. Too weird for my family, too wealthy for normal relationships, too young for the business world to take seriously. My phone started buzzing around 11 p.m. The Forbes list had gone live online. The first call was from Sarah. "Jordan, this is crazy. Is this real?" "Is what real?" "The Forbes list. It says you're worth over $4 billion. The internet says a lot of things. Jordan, don't play games with me. Is this true? Why does it matter? Why does it matter? Because you're my cousin. Because we're family. Are we? Because this afternoon you told me I couldn't afford your lifestyle and shouldn't come to Grandpa's party." Silence. That was a misunderstanding. What was misunderstood? We didn't know. If we'd known, obviously. Obviously what? You would have treated me differently based on my bank account. That's not what I meant. What did you mean? Sarah was flustered now. Look, can we just start over? Forget about this afternoon. You're obviously invited to the party. We want you there. Because I'm family or because I'm rich? Because you're family. Funny how my family status changed in the last 3 hours. My phone was now buzzing with calls from Marcus, Emily, and David. I let them all go to voicemail. The next morning, I arrived at the office to find our lobby filled with reporters. The Forbes announcement had made national news, and everyone wanted to interview the mysterious young billionaire who'd built his fortune in AI. My assistant Maria looked overwhelmed. There are 17 interview requests, 12 speaking invitations, and about 50 calls from people claiming to be your relatives. Relatives? Apparently you have a lot more cousins than you knew about. I laughed despite myself. Hold all the interviews for now. And screen the family calls carefully. Most of my actual relatives have my personal number. Around lunchtime, Maria buzzed me. "Your cousin Sarah is here. She says it's urgent. Send her up." Sarah walked into my office looking nervous and underdressed. She'd clearly expected to find me in some modest startup space, not the executive suite of a major corporation. "Jordan, this place is incredible. Thank you. I can't believe. When did all this happen?" "Which part?" "All of it. The company, the money, the everything." I gestured for her to sit down. "I started the company 6 years ago. We've been growing steadily since then. But why didn't you tell us?" "Tell you what?" "That you were successful. That you were building something amazing." I tried. "Remember when I invited everyone to our Series A announcement 3 years ago?" Sarah looked uncomfortable. "That was different. We thought you were just playing around with some tech startup." I was. And now that tech startup is worth almost $5 billion. But you seem so normal. You drove that old Toyota, you lived in that small apartment. I still drive that Toyota. I like it. But you could afford anything. I can. But I choose what I actually want, not what I think will impress people. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Jordan, about yesterday. What about it? We were wrong. Completely wrong. And we want to make it right. How? Come to the party tonight. Please. Grandpa would be devastated if you weren't there. Would he? Or would you be devastated if the billionaire cousin wasn't there to impress your friends? That's not fair. Isn't it? Yesterday I was too poor for your lifestyle. Today I'm suddenly welcome. What changed? We learned the truth. The truth about what? My net worth, or my value as a person. Sarah was crying now. Jordan, please. I know we messed up. But we're family. Are we? Because yesterday you all agreed that I didn't belong. We were wrong. About my wealth or about my worth? Both. All of it. We were stupid and shallow and we hurt you. I looked at my cousin, really looked at her. Sarah had always been the ringleader, the one who set the tone for how the family treated me. She was beautiful, confident, and had never wanted for anything in her life. She was also, I realized, genuinely sorry. Sarah, can I ask you something? Anything. If the Forbes list had never come out, would you have called to apologize for yesterday? She was quiet for a long time. No, she finally whispered. Probably not. Why not? Because I thought I was right. I thought you were just struggling. And I thought that made us better than you. And now I realize that you've been successful this whole time, and we were too arrogant to see it. So you're apologizing because I'm rich? No. I'm apologizing because I was wrong about who you are. Who am I? You're brilliant. You're hardworking. You built something incredible while we were all just existing on family money. That gave me pause. What do you mean, family money? Sarah looked surprised. The trust funds. The investments Grandpa set up for all of us. What trust funds? Jordan, don't you get your quarterly distributions? I don't know what you're talking about. Sarah stared at me. Grandpa set up trust funds for all his grandchildren when we turned 18. We each get about $50,000 a quarter. I never got any money from Grandpa except birthday checks. That's impossible. There are 8 grandchildren, 8 trust funds. A terrible thought occurred to me. Sarah, how many grandchildren were at family gatherings when we were kids? 7. You, me, Marcus, Emily, David, Christina, and Tommy. Count again. She looked confused, then her face went pale. Oh my God. We never included you in the count. Because I wasn't really family. Jordan, that's exactly what it was. You got trust funds because you were real grandchildren. I got birthday checks because I was the charity case. Sarah was crying harder now. We didn't know. We thought Grandpa was treating everyone the same. He was treating everyone the same. Everyone except me. My phone rang. It was Grandpa. Jordan, have you seen today's news coverage? They're calling you a genius. Hi, Grandpa. I'm so proud of you, son. So incredibly proud. Thank you. Are you coming to the party tonight? Sarah said there was some confusion, but that's all cleared up now, right? I looked at Sarah, who was watching me desperately. Actually, Grandpa, I have a different idea. What if instead of the party tonight we did something just the two of us? Just us. Yes. How would you feel about dinner at that little Italian place where you used to take me when I was a kid? Tony's? But Jordan, the family is expecting. The family will be fine. I want to spend your birthday with the person who actually matters to me. I'd love that, son. After I hung up, Sarah looked devastated. Jordan, please don't shut us out completely. I'm not shutting you out. I'm choosing how to spend my time. What about the party? You'll have a lovely time without me. You can afford it after all. That's not what this is about anymore. Isn't it? Sarah, in the last 24 hours, I've gone from too poor to attend a family gathering to suddenly being the guest of honor. My net worth changed your perception of my worth as a person. We want to do better. I hope you do. But understanding money doesn't make you family. Caring about someone when they don't need anything from you, that makes you family. That evening I sat across from Grandpa at Tony's, the same corner booth where he'd taken me after every major disappointment in my childhood. When the other kids excluded me from games, when I didn't get invited to birthday parties, when I felt like I didn't belong anywhere. You know, Grandpa said, cutting his lasagna, I should have handled things differently over the years. What do you mean? The trust funds. I thought your mother wouldn't want you to receive money from me. She was always so independent, so determined to make it on her own. She never knew about the trust funds, did she? I never told her. I was afraid she'd think I was trying to buy a relationship with you. So instead, you let me think I wasn't worth the same investment as the other grandchildren. Grandpa put down his fork. Jordan, that's not. I never thought of it that way. How did you think of it? I thought I was respecting your mother's wishes. But I see now that I was hurting you instead. Grandpa, do you know why I kept my success secret? Tell me. Because I wanted to know who would love me when I had nothing to offer them. And the answer was you. Just you. Grandpa's eyes filled with tears. Jordan. You're the only one who visited when I was in the hospital with pneumonia at 19. You're the only one who came to my college graduation. You're the only one who called just to check on me. They should have too. But they didn't. And that taught me something important about who people really are. What's that? That love isn't about what you can do for someone. It's about showing up when there's nothing in it for you. Grandpa reached across the table and took my hand. I love you, Jordan. Not because you're successful, but because you're my grandson. I know. That's why we're here. What about the rest of the family? What about them? Don't you think they deserve a chance to make things right? I thought about that for a moment. Maybe. But they'll have to earn it the same way everyone else does. How's that? By showing up when I don't need anything from them. 6 months later, I established the Walsh Foundation, a charitable organization focused on providing technology education to underprivileged kids. The foundation was funded with $1 billion from my personal wealth. Sarah was the first family member to volunteer. Not as a board member or in some prestigious role, but as a tutor working with kids who reminded me of myself at that age. Brilliant, ambitious, and convinced they didn't belong. She'd been volunteering for 3 months before she even mentioned it to me. Marcus started a nonprofit that taught business skills to single mothers. Emily went back to school to become a teacher. David left his trust fund job to work for a company that provided clean water to developing countries. They were all still wealthy. They were all still privileged. But they were finally learning what Grandpa had tried to teach them all along. That what you do with your advantages matters more than what advantages you have. At Grandpa's 91st birthday party, which I organized and funded, the whole family was there. But this time it wasn't about who could afford what. It was about who had shown up when it mattered. And for the first time in my life, that included everyone. The excluded grandson had become the family leader. The poor relation had become the benefactor. But most importantly, the kid who'd never felt like he belonged had finally built a family worth belonging to. Because sometimes the best way to find your place in the world is to create a place where everyone belongs.